Starting things off with a colorful image here that I hope will sear itself into everyone's mind. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the ending of Avengers, the second film, where Thanos, right after the credits, just says, "Fine, I'll do it myself," which really reflects my attitude at this point when it comes to publishing any of my work, whether it's novels or, in this case, comic books, because I just got tired of waiting for other people to open the door for me. I just said, fine, I'll just kick open some doors and see what I can make happen for myself. I may not achieve the level of success as like prominent writers like, Mark Waid, Stephen King, or J.K. Rowling. I'm trying to think of another comic writer, Frank Miller. There's a good one. I may not achieve their status, but I have been able to achieve a little bit of notice. I like to think, and people in my area, my region, are reading my books and my comics that weren't at all when I was still waiting to get noticed. So that's my attitude, and this image sums that up pretty well. And I'll just say, for anybody that comes in, if you ever have any questions at any point during this presentation, feel free to chime in and chat a question at me. I'll be happy to stop and clarify anything if I leave anything out. So, but with that said, we'll move right along. If I can, there we go. There are a lot of small things to do when it comes to creating and publishing a comic, but there are three key steps. First, you have to create it. Second, you have to publish it, and then you have to promote it. And there are quite a bit of things you can do in all of these steps, but that really kind of sums up what I think are sort of like a three steps to success, you might say. These are the things that you absolutely must do. And so with that said, the first step is, of course, to create your comic. You got to write, and you can look up templates for specific scripts when it comes to comics. Barry did a really deep dive into illustrations and how to communicate that with when he went through scripting. So I don't want to get too much into that. Also, because you can look up templates out there that'll tell you to help you figure out how to break down the actual format that you want. But as far as like how to tell your story, there's not much I can tell you there, because it's your story. You have to figure out the way that you want to tell it, to how you want it structured and so forth, and what process works for you. Little tidbits that I will say when it comes to communicate, if you're like me, communicating with an artist. Think of your script as a movie script in that sense, and your artist is the director. So you want to give as clear an interpretation of what is going on. I like to describe it like a specific shot. I will say something like, it's like a medium shot, it's a close-up shot, it's a 2-shot or a 3-shot, just so that he knows exactly how to structure the panel, who all needs to be in it, that sort of thing. But there is a level of trust. You have to kind of hand off the interpretation of what you're saying to an artist. You can communicate back and forth, but in the end, you do want to work with an artist that you can trust. And speaking of artists, that does bring me to the next part of creating a comic, and that's finding an artist. Now, if anybody watching this happens to already be an artist, lucky you get to skip this step. And power to you, because this can be a bit of a challenge, I think, finding the right artist, one who is not only that you think their work is good, but also that adequately tells the story that you're trying to tell. Because if you're trying to tell a story about science fiction and outer space, then you don't want art that's going to be kind of gritty and street level. You want something that's going to be really just cosmic and amazing and eye-grabbing. And at the same time, if you're like me, if you're writing a horror comic, then you don't want an artist who's going to use a lot of really bright and exciting colors. You want an artist who specializes in kind of darker, more subdued tones to really give an ominous feel. So it's all about finding the right fit, and that can be a challenge. But there are, here's some tidbits of how to go about finding someone like that. I'm sure most people here are familiar with Fiverr. That is a great place that you can go and find just about anything you could need, whether, with comic book artists, illustrators, video, audio. There's all kinds of things available on there. Fiverr is a good place to start. Another one, which I recommend, incidentally, is digital webbing. Digitalwebbing.com, they have a forum, it's totally free, and it is set up strictly for creators to connect with one another and collaborate on projects that they would like to do. So what I did, I simply started a thread there where I just said, here's the project I'm working on. Here's what I can offer. If this is something that's interesting to you, connect back with me. And that was how I got the artist who is currently working with me on my project, Moby Dick, Back from the Deep. So a lot of praise for me for digital webbing. I've had really good luck with that particular one. But these two aren't the only ones. Like, wherever you can find an artist, if you know another outlet out there that you can find one, if you happen to live in a neighborhood and there's a comic book artist down the road that you can work with, do it. That's fantastic. But find somebody that you can communicate with, that you're comfortable working with, and that you both work well with one another, telling the story that you have. Now, the next step is publishing it. And there are several ways of doing this. Of course, there's print, there's digital, and there's web comics. I'll start with print. That's the most traditional and the one that people think of. The thing about print comics is you are going to need a little bit of an investment up front because you do have to pay to get those printed. That's an important thing to consider. What I will say is the two printing companies that I have listed here, Comics Wellspring and Kablam, one of the reasons that I really like them is that they specialize in, they call them like small print runs. So you don't have to make a huge investment where you have to print, several hundred or even 1,000 copies at a single time. I've printed orders as low as 25 at times, and they're perfectly fine with that. That's their specialty. So they're both really good. I lean a little bit more toward Comics Wellspring for whatever that's worth. I like the paper that they use, and they've been really easy to work with. Kablam is very good too, though. So two to consider for print editions, and of course, I'm sure there are numerous ones out there. Those are just the two that I have the most experience with, and I do like them. Now, if you don't have that kind of capital, or if you think that strictly going digital is the best way for you, you have Comixology, you have Comics Plus, and I know there are dozens of others that I simply didn't have room to include on this single screen. But you can go that route and distribute your comic that way. I don't have a lot of experience with those. I have tried them. I've always had better luck going print for whatever that's worth. But, with so many things, like everything in life, you do you. So if going digital seems like the best route for you and it's better than print, then go digital. Do what works for you. That's what's most important. And finally, webcomics. Webcomics, I think, are a little bit underappreciated for whatever reason, because they're fairly non-traditional, and I think people sort of view them as as kind of minor league or super indie level when it comes to comics sometimes. But I think that's unfair. For instance, in my case, utilizing that route is how I got my current comic, Moby Dick, Back from the Deep, to get the visibility that it currently has. I'm going to step out of this and move over to that because I have that webcomic called up right now where you can see. Here's the opening page of Moby Dick, Back from the Deep. There's the first cover that started it all. And if we keep going, we have all of our options here. If anybody ever wants to follow us, by all means, go backfromthedeep.com. Cheap plug right there. But you can see we've got comments from people who took notice of us, and people who met me and then went back and read it subsequently. So just to tell you the backstory about this and why I went this route, I kind of shopped it around to publishers throughout the industry, anybody that might be interested. And I will just say for my own, gratification here, that one that considered it the longest was actually IDW Publishing. They passed on it, and they said it was because they simply didn't have room in their schedule. So what I always told myself after that was that, they looked at my comic in a meeting and said, wow, this comic is so awesome, but we're contractually obligated for the year. We just can't do it. But gosh, we wish we could. I can't prove that, but that's what I tell myself anyway. But anyway, when I kept not finding a good home for it, I just ultimately decided I want this out there in some way because I put so much work into it. I don't want to just leave it alone. So I researched how to set up a web comic, and I launched it. I created the URL, backfromthedeep.com. And what I started doing, I got my artist, Joe Bill is sick. And what I would do is I would just put up a new page every week, every Friday. That's been our schedule. And so just kept doing that. And over time, people started noticing it and taking an interest in it to the point where now we've had over like 20,000 people visit this website and read my comic that were not reading it while I waited for somebody to notice. And so with that visibility, I was able to then take that and put that into Kickstarter campaigns. And so far I've had 3 successful ones, and the last one was incredibly successful. And it's all because I started with this, non-traditional format using a webcomic. So again, like I said before, you do what works best for you, but don't be afraid to try out non-traditional routes because they can pan out and they can work out well for you. And the nice thing about a webcomic is it cost me nothing to launch this webcomic. I mean, the only thing that I ever had to pay for with it was that URL, and that was dirt cheap. So if a webcomic seems the way to go for you, then absolutely, it's well worth exploring. So give me just a minute. I'm going to return to my presentation here. Go on to the next one. But equally as important as creating your comic and publishing your comic is promoting it. And this is something that writers I know tend to shy away from. But it's one of the reasons why we didn't become actors or we didn't become television anchors. It's because we shy away from the spotlight. We prefer to be in the back putting together the copy that people notice and read. But if you're going to create a comic, if you're going to write a book, whatever it is, you've got to get the word out because nobody else is going to, especially when it's DIY, when you're the one doing it, nobody's going to spread the word other than you. So you've got to get out there and do it. And the best tool that we have at our disposal is social media. Social media gets a lot of criticism these days in that people feel like the negativity that exists in the world is a direct result of social media. And I mean, they're not entirely wrong. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Social media has brought about some negativity, but the thing that it's also brought, it's connected us with one another in a way that was never possible before. And it has allowed for small businesses to have a way of advertising and promoting themselves without having to rely on massive ad campaigns that cost a ton of money. If they get creative, they have ways to get out there. And the same holds true for writers and creators working on the independent scene like us. So utilize social media. It's free. It gives you direct access to potential readers. It gives readers direct access to you. And did I mention that it's free? So make full use of social media when it comes to promoting yourself. But in the vein of promoting yourself further, you got to be as visible as you possibly can. You may not be able to get on TV, but you can be a guest on a podcast. I've done that a few times. You can make appearances on a YouTube channel show, or you can be interviewed by websites and bloggers. The thing about those, like, they may not get the same sort of visibility and viewership as you would, like, if you were on NBC or Fox or whatever. But what they do have, their smaller viewers are far more dedicated and they're more likely to be interested in what you have to talk about. So you kind of got to consider that, whether hundreds upon thousands of people seeing you versus maybe 100 to 1,000 people taking notice of you and actually being interested in what you have to say, interested in buying your comic in this case. So make use of those niche channels. They're, again, like social media, they're free. So they can be a great tool, and it's a great way to network yourself with these various people on the independent scene with podcasts and YouTube channel shows who are all about promoting independent comics. And so finally, if you don't like speaking in public, all I can tell you is you got to get over it, because that's the name of the game. That's how you're going to get your work out there. It's the only way to do it. Further on promoting your comic, if you can make use of other outlets, for instance, newspapers. I managed to get in two newspapers over the course of doing my independent comic. Only two, and they were not gigantic, newspapers like USA Today or anything. But I'm proud of that I got noticed there. I did get on radio one time. That's it. Not on television though, although I do know somebody who did. But if you're able to get any of those, then do it. Don't shy away from it. Don't hide in a corner. Take advantage of all those. And the last one that I want to mention, this comes to the creativity thing. This image down there on the bottom of a flyer for my Kickstarter, that's a local comic book shop. And I'm going to give them a quick little plug here. Rick's Comic City here in Clarksville. Rick's Comic City is a great store to buy comics, not just because they have an excellent selection, but they are also very committed to promoting independent local writers like me. And they actually have like a whole wall in their store dedicated to local independent writers. And it's so cool anytime I go in there because I'll see a single shelf with all of my books on it. It's a trip. It's real cool to see that. So when I came to them with my last Kickstarter and I just said, would you guys mind just hanging up a flyer somewhere to help me promote it a little bit more? And they jumped at it. They said, yeah, we would love to. And I thought they would just put it like on a shelf or something. They actually put it in the front window right there by the front door so that everybody would see it. So another great store in town that has promoted my work is Hootabam Book Traders. It's another good one in downtown Clarksville. If you have bookstores or any sort, even if it's just a gas station in your town that's willing to promote your work and help get the word out for you, then take advantage of that. And be sure to return the favor a little bit. Like with Rick's, I don't buy a whole lot of comics these days, but whenever I do, I try to make sure to go there first. Whenever I have a book that I want, I always call the people at Hootabam, say, hey, I'm looking for this book. Can you get it for me? Rather than going out and just, picking it up at Amazon. Try to support the local people because they were good enough to help me. I want to return the favor. It becomes a really good reciprocal relationship that way. So all these outlets to get the word out about your comic and making sure people know about it, because when it comes to doing this, you do need a little bit of money. That's the bottom line. People want to say they do this for the love of the craft, but we do need a bit of money to pay the bills. So one place that promotion and getting the word out that is just absolutely critical is, of course, crowdfunding. In my case, was Kickstarter. There are other ones out there. There's Indiegogo, there's GoFundMe, find whichever one works for you. But this is where promotion is absolutely vital if you want to be successful with this. You want to be visible before you launch your campaign, and you want to be visible after your campaign. You got to use social media. You got to use those podcasts. You got to use those YouTube channels, any and every avenue that you have at your disposal to tell people about your book, about your campaign and your book, and just getting them interested in being a part of this journey that your story is going to be taking. So, and the final key with everything is, of course, to never stop learning. You're always going to there's always going to be something new. You're always going to find something else that somebody knew that you didn't. And don't be defensive about that. Just accept it and file it away and utilize it next time. In my case, a lot of what I have learned is through trial and error. I learned so many things by doing the wrong thing first. So if I can help anybody skip that step and move right into just doing a little bit of the right thing, that's fantastic. But always be willing to learn something new, because this is an ever-evolving market. It's an ever-evolving industry, just like everything else in life, but it seems to be evolving even quicker these days. So try the best you can to keep your finger on the pulse of everything, to keep up with what's going on. And then you can try, right now, the kind of new avenue for promoting comics is crowdsourcing, web comics, that sort of thing. Maybe there'll be a new wave that comes up in the years ahead. And if you're the first one to jump on that, then, you're ahead of the curve and everybody else. So that really wraps everything up that I had to say. So I will just leave this here. If anybody would like to connect with me, we have a Facebook page for all of the work that I've done, my wife and I, in addition to all my comics, you can check out, we've got a podcast over there, Tales from a Small Town Journalist, cheap plug. And also you can keep up with all of our Halloween decorations because we're really big Halloween decorators. And of course, I'm on Twitter. You can see there. I'm on Instagram. Speaking of checking out videos of all our Halloween decorations, there's our YouTube channel. I went with the tinyurl.com one because the default one that I got is this big lengthy one, and that's just way easier to remember. And also, feel free to sign up for my newsletter. I'd love to have more subscribers on there. But that is my entire presentation about doing it all yourself. I hope this was helpful. I hope somebody out there can take a little bit from this and skip some of the wrong steps that I took in the early goings of my humble independent career. And I'll just close out by saying thank you. Thanks for paying attention, and hope everyone has a good day.